This game is fire. Get it? Please don't go. I'm desperate. Fire Force Online, if it was not obvious, is based off the anime series known as Fire Force. And I truly do mean what the title says when I say it feels like the game I have been searching for. A game like Type Souls that, well, is not actually Type Souls. An open world game that's like a CC experience but not overloaded with specs and admins looking for power trips. A game that truly makes me feel like I won for my skill and lost for my lack of skill. And man, I'm so excited to see how it grows. But what exactly do you do in this game? Well, don't worry, I'll tell you and give you a little starter guide. I won't be going over every detail on NPCs, but I'll give you a general overview, and if you really want that info, I'll put the Trello down in the description. With that out of the way, where should I start? Oh, right. So when you first spawn, you will be a civilian, and from here, you have to pick up missions from random people. In these missions, you can do two options. You can either be good or bad. Depending on which one you choose, you will either be a part of the White Clad or the Fire Force. Well, after you pass the respective exams anyways. Though I recommend getting to at least level 5, because that's when you learn what your generation ability is. Which is a pretty good segue to... Before I dive into the combat, let me tell you what you'll be using for combat. When you first join into FFO, you'll be either Generation 1, 2, or 3. Each generation has their own set of abilities, gimmicks, drawbacks, and advantages. You're probably wondering which is the best, right? Well, believe it or not, one of the game's main selling points is its amazing balance of all the moves. I've encountered a lot of abilities in different generations, and so far, nothing really felt completely unfair. Like I said, each generation has its drawbacks and advantages. Someone from Generation 1 can easily beat someone from Generation 3. There is no best ability for each generation either. Each ability has its own specific hitbox, moves, and roles that it plays. It truly does come down to how you fight and what ability is gonna help you fight better. That being said though, I will give a quick rundown of each generation, starting with Generation 1. When you first see a Generation 1 user, you'd probably think that it's instantly the weakest. As compared to Gen 2 and 3, it doesn't have any big flashy abilities, and it doesn't exactly look too strong. However, it has some upsides that Generation 2 and 3 can only dream of. The first one being the soon-to-be added Infernal state. I have no idea how it's gonna work, but apparently Gen 1s will have the exclusive ability to become an Infernal, whatever that does. However, the second thing Generation 1 has over the others is its much more stronger Press of Death. Meaning if you struggle through Generation 1, that means you'll have some of the strongest abilities. But that's more of endgame stuff. Now Gen 2 is a lot more unique. They can't produce fire but instead manipulate it, usually enhancing other gadgets or weapons they already have, which makes this generation very unique. You see, it has two extra gimmicks. One, you have to buy a lighter to even use your ability, and two, a special bar called fuel. In combat, you usually have two bars to deal with, energy and overheating. But now with Gen 2, you have to constantly check your fuel as well. In exchange for this, they have more heavier, bigger, and more damaging moves. And finally, we got Gen 3, which is my personal favorite. That being said though, they're not actually really all that interesting. Their main advantage is only having two bars to deal with and having pretty decent abilities, but they don't really have anything extra outside of that, which makes them kind of boring, but very powerful. That basically wraps up the generations, but how exactly is the combat? Well, to put it simply, it's slow. Good slow. When it first came out, a lot of people complained that the combat is way too slow, but I never understood why that's a problem. I mean, chess is slow, and that has been around for literal centuries. The slow combat just feels so natural to me. I have time to react and move accordingly, and that's what the game's aiming for. It's very skill and reaction based. Trying to make it faster would completely destroy it. I mean, one of the main things you'll be doing is waiting for openings so you can go in and combo for as much damage as you can. However, the opponent can and probably will block and counter mid-combo. With all that combined, it was honestly pretty hard to get used to at first, and I felt like there was nothing I can do to get out of a combo. But as I leveled up and got used to the combat, I was able to see openings, big counters, and do combos pretty decently and effectively. I'm no pro by any means, would barely call myself good, but I do enough when I need to, and man does it feel good. It's been a long time since a game made me feel like it was genuinely my fault I lost a fight and makes me make mental notes to do things mid-battle. The only thing I dislike about it is the hitboxes can be a little bit inconsistent. I do feel like I get bullshitted mid-fight sometimes as my Excalibur goes through someone's torso with no effect, but that's not very common and I still usually win the fights when it does happen. There is probably a lot I missed about the combat, but that's my general overview for PvP. However, I do have some complaints about it, one of which isn't generally the game's fault, mostly the community's fault. The first complaint is the PvE. It's not exactly the best. The Infernals that you fight against, especially as a fire force, don't know what hit stun means. You can do a grabbing move and they will still hit you through it. It can be very annoying, and even once you do find a pattern for it, the fact I have to find a pattern in the first place is kind of bad. And finally, the second complaint that's mostly because of the community is the absolute gap of members when it comes to the Fire Force and the White Clad. As of right now, the White Clad has a solid 1,000 more members than the Fire Force does. And because of that, Fire Forces get jumped all the time. I've been to a server where 20 of the 25 people there were completely white clad. It was actually insane. And it's very frustrating, yes, but, well, what can you do, you know? Obviously, PvP and combat are not the only things you can do in this game. Progression is a big part of it as well. So let's talk about it, shall we? The progression on this game is fairly straightforward. After you join one of the two factions, you'll be sent to do missions on the mission board or by phone. The phone missions are a lot easier and faster, but do a lot less, while the mission board ones last longer and are more tricky to do, but give bigger rewards. You could also contribute to your faction, but you'll probably be doing that more passively. The missions don't usually include PvP, but in some rare cases they can. Those can be a bit annoying, but in the end you'll have to do PvP at some point, as when you reach level 30, the only way to increase your rank is by PvP. You can always do the events like the payload push and the turf war. I feel like those are easy to understand. Or you could PvP normally with weights, which can be bought at the training area. What's the training area? It's where you train your stats. Here you can train your strength and defense to get stronger. At some point you will need to train to rank up. What exactly do you get from ranking up? Well, like most RPGs, you have a skill tree, and it's not just filled up with some weird misc upgrades either. The things you pick from the skill tree can change how you play and affect many things, like having hyper armor on M2, having a rage boost, or simply just having more strength potential. As of right now, that's all I have done for progression. However, there's a lot of things for progression that I have not reached yet, like augmentations, the Press of Death, generational upgrades, armor, etc. But I think I'm making this video too long, so let me just move on to the conclusion. FFO has truly broke all my expectations. To be 100% honest with you all, I thought we were gonna have another Type Souls. No communication with the Discord, OP specs and admins looking for power trips, but what I got instead was something with soul. Devs that listen and don't just whine like 12-year-olds. The community may be the same, but I never really expected it to change. Fire Force Online honestly gave me hope for these types of games again, and I can't wait to see what comes from it. But I suppose that's the end of the video, huh? I hope you liked it, and I hope you comment, and as always, please subscribe. Ciao.